You know, there are some names that don't just belong to a player, they literally define an era. And for the last 2 decades, one name has been synonymous with a kind of magic that honestly transcends the sport itself. So today, we're going to dive into the story of that legend, Lionel Messi. To really get his crowning achievement, the 2022 World Cup, you've got to understand this quote. Now, this wasn't about servitude or anything like that. It was about a team so completely united behind their leader, they would do all the dirty work, all the hard running, just to unleash his genius. It is the perfect snapshot of how he finally reached the summit. But to understand that moment, him finally lifting the one trophy that had always eluded him, we have to rewind. We have to go way back. Because before all the records and the awards, there was just a small boy from Rosario, Argentina, facing a challenge that threatened to end his dream before it even had a chance to start. The story of one of the biggest contracts in football history, well, it didn't start in some fancy boardroom. Nope. It started at a tennis club, with a promise scribbled on a napkin that would literally change the course of football history. This is that completely improbable origin story. I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows a journey that was on the absolute brink of collapse. At just 11 years old, the diagnosis of a growth hormone deficiency, that could have been the end right there. The big local clubs, they just couldn't afford the treatment. But Barcelona's faith was so absolute that a team director famously secured his future on a simple paper napkin. That single act of belief, that's what set everything in motion. So Messi arrives in a new country, a new continent. But he isn't just joining an academy, he's entering La Masia. And this place, it wasn't just a factory for churning out players, it was a school of thought. It was all built on Johan Cruyff's vision of total football, a language of short passes and constant movement that would basically become second nature to Messi and the very foundation of all his future success. Okay, so with that foundation in place, now we get to the Barcelona blueprint. When Messi first breaks into the senior team, he's obviously a phenomenal talent, but he's not yet the legend we know. For that to happen, it would take a visionary coach and one single, absolutely revolutionary tactical shift. Under manager Pep Guardiola, the blueprint was finally drawn. Messi, who'd been playing out on the right wing, was moved into a brand new, central role, the false nine, and it was a stroke of pure genius. Instead of being a traditional striker waiting up top, he would drop deep, completely disorienting defenders and creating space for everyone. It didn't just change games, it changed his entire career, transforming him from a brilliant winger into maybe the most lethal goal scorer on the planet. And the result of that shift? This number, 73. In a single season, Lionel Messi scored 73 goals. It's a figure that still feels like a typo, doesn't it? This wasn't just a record, it was a statement. The false nine experiment hadn't just worked, it had completely redefined what we thought was possible for a single player. All that goal scoring, as you can imagine, translated directly into individual dominance. For over a decade, the debate over the world's best player was pretty much a two-man race, and the results of that historic rivalry are crystal clear in the sport's most prestigious award, the Ballon d'Or, 8 for Messi, 5 for his great rival, Cristiano Ronaldo. It was a completely unprecedented era of excellence. But, and this is a big but, while he was conquering the world at the club level, there was a shadow that followed him, a burden he carried every single time he pulled on the blue and white stripes of his country, Argentina. And this right here, this was the brutal reality of his career for so long. At Barcelona, he was a god, surrounded by 35 major trophies. But with Argentina, there was only heartbreak. The greatest player in the world, it seemed, just couldn't deliver for his nation. And that conflict really came to define a huge part of his legacy. The weight of that pressure was just immense, and it led to this brutal repeating cycle of heartbreak. A World Cup final lost in extra time, followed by 2 consecutive Copa America finals lost on penalties. By 2016, the emotional toll was so great, he actually, shockingly, announced his retirement from the national team. But he came back. Of course he came back. And when he did, something had changed. The whole narrative was about to take its final triumphant turn. This wasn't about Messi saving Argentina anymore. It was about Argentina finally building a team to save him. And then, finally, redemption. First came the 2021 Copa America, breaking a 28-year trophy curse for Argentina. It was his first major trophy for his country. And then, just 1 year later, the ultimate prize. In what might be the greatest final ever played, Lionel Messi lifted the World Cup. The quest was over. The story was complete.
So how did they finally do it? Well, this wasn't the old Argentina just waiting for a moment of magic. This was a perfectly engineered machine. They were incredibly disciplined on defense, among the very best in the whole tournament. They consciously created a comfort zone for their 35-year-old captain, with his teammates running the extra miles just to conserve his energy for the moments that mattered. It was a masterclass in collective sacrifice, which brings us right back to where we started. Everyone was happy to be a worker for Messi. So, with every possible trophy finally won, the final chapter of his career became about something different. It became about his legacy, sure, but also about the man behind the global icon.
After leaving Europe for good, he made a move that, let's be honest, surprised a lot of people by joining Inter Miami. The motivation was pretty clear, and it wasn't just about the money. It was about stepping away from the relentless 24/7 pressure of Europe's top leagues, a choice driven by family, a desire for a different quality of life, and the unique chance to build a real football legacy here in the United States. With that World Cup victory, the one conversation that had dominated football for 15 years reached a pretty deafening conclusion. From analysts to fans to former players, the sentiment was almost unanimous. For so many people, the debate over the greatest of all time was finally over. But as we look back on this whole incredible journey, from the napkin contract all the way to World Cup glory, a final question kind of emerges. Is greatness really just measured in trophies and records? Or is it found in the resilience to overcome all that heartbreak, the humility to lead by serving your team, and the sheer, unadulterated joy that one player brought to millions and millions of people for an entire generation? The numbers, they tell one story, but his legacy, well, that tells another.